In a previous video that you can check out right here, we installed the winch and fairlead mount nice and tight up behind the grill here. Now it's time to fabricate a front bumper. We've got our welder and our tube bender out, and we're going to be making our front bumper out of 1 3/4 DOM tubing. That will make up the main structure, but there's a couple of things we have to keep in mind when we're designing the bumper. Obviously we want it to look good, but we need to make sure we have some side protection, and we want to add mounting for some more lights. You can see I've got some lights down right here that I want to put in here. We do have aftermarket headlights, but it's still not quite enough lighting for some of the night wheeling that I like to do. Also, on this year of Blazer, the turn signals were integrated into the bumper. Since I took the stock bumper off, I haven't had turn signals. I need to get that back. So we're going to be figuring out some way of integrating turn signals into the bumper as well. Also, we need to make sure that we can access our winch. When we start adding the bumper tubing on the front here, it's going to get harder to access the winch clutch, and we need to make sure that we don't screw ourselves over that way. So let's grab some tubing and get to work. The first thing we need to do is cut a tube to length for the main piece of our bumper. I'm making sure to cut a little long so I have plenty of length for the returns at the end for some fender protection. Now that I've got a piece of tube cut for my main bar here, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I want to bend it to match the front of the truck. The front of the Blazer here has a pretty pronounced V at the center of the grill. So my initial thought was that I needed to bend to match that V so that I can, so that it'll follow the body line across the front here. But because I've got this big flat plate for the winch to mount to, I'm leaning more towards actually running flat across the front here and then bending in at the edges of the plate to get back to the right angle. I think that's the way I'm going to go. It looks like it's going to work out. Got my handy dandy angle finder here, and it looks like I need to bend this back at about 5.5 degrees from the edge of the plate, and that will get me right to where I need to be to match the body line. So I think it's time to start making some bends and see where we end up. I'm spending a fair amount of time here making sure the tubing is level before I start the bend. This is the only way to keep all of your bends on the same plane. This is a time-consuming process, but as we'll see later, not getting it right will take even more time. As you can see, I've got the main tube bent up right here, and it now matches the angle of the grill pretty nicely. But before I can do the finishing off here, I want to make sure that this is exactly where I want the tube to be. We have these lights that we're going to be mounting right up in here, and I need to make sure that I know exactly how I'm going to do that before I finalize the placement here. I've done a little math, and it looks like I'm going to need about a 5-inch plate for these to mount onto so that I can get far enough away from the grill here and also provide a little protection under the lights in case I come up and hit something underneath here. So I'm going to make the plate that these lights are going to fit on and get that set here so that I can see if I want to move this main tube in or out a little bit to better match the way the plate sits. So let's get the plate made up. Well, given the near disaster we just had with the lights falling down, these magnets aren't up to the task of holding the plate in place while I try and figure things out. So I think the next step is going to be building some brackets that to start holding things together, and at least then I can tack them on and move things around. Maybe we'll have to make more than one version, but let's put it together and see what we come up with. After trying out a few cardboard templates, I decided the best way to support the lights and the main tube was with a pair of 1/4 inch triangular plates mounted vertically on the sides of the winch blade. Once I got the triangular mounting brackets cut, I placed them on here with the magnets. After a lot of iterations, I think I finally got them placed where I want them. I was messing around with the idea of moving the whole bumper up some, and I think it would look better in some ways to have it be right in this spot on the grill. That would, block any gaps you might be able to see. But like I've mentioned before, I've got a 3-inch body lift on this. The higher the bumper goes, the wider it ends up getting in order to come down here and attach. And eventually it can end up looking like a wall of bumper. And I'm really hoping for a more slimmer look. So I've got to keep the top of the bumper down to a reasonable level so that where I have to come down here doesn't get out of hand. So I think this is going to be our final spot. So it's time to go ahead and bend up our returns on the end to provide our side protection. Once that's done, I can go ahead and tack all of this stuff together and start working on the hoop that goes over the top and the bottom pieces. In the background, you can hear my air compressor kick on. I'm using a small 5-gallon pancake compressor because I'm waiting on parts to fix my main compressor. It's not ideal, but if it's all you have, you can still get the job done. It just takes a little longer. Remember what I said earlier about keeping your tube level? Well, not getting that right is about to bite me. I'm getting ready to tack the main tube to the mounting brackets, and I'm doing a little measurement, and I noticed that the driver's side fender protection bar is not at the same angle as the passenger side. So I'm going to have to cut that and sleeve it. Luckily this is 1 3/4 DOM, and I've got some 1.5 inch, which sleeves in there nicely. So we'll make a nice clean cut, sleeve that in, and then we can tweak the angles and get it just perfect before we tack it all in place. Here you can see where I cut and sleeve the tube to fix the angle. And over here, I've started mocking up the lower tube using a piece of scrap and some tape. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to mark out where I want the second bend here. So we marked out this tube here, and I measured on the bumper that I want the top of this tube to end up 2 5/8 inches away from the top tube, which is marked by this line here. So we need to make a mark here. So I'm going to mark another line at 2 5/8 inches down from there, and that'll tell us where to make this bend so that we hit our mark out on this end. By making careful measurements and marking the ends of my first bend, I can figure out exactly where I need to start the second bend on the tube. Marking it out on the concrete helps to visualize how everything's going to go together. We've got this lower tube all bent up and tack welded in place, little tape holding it on this end, and I think it turned out pretty good. I really like the look of the double bars going around the corner, and so I really wanted to have that. But the only bummer part about that is I really wish this bend could have been a little bit farther out here, but you know what? It's as good as I could get with the bender I have, and I think it worked out pretty good. So now that we've got this side finished, we've proved that it's going to work out. It's time to make another one for the other side.
One eternity later.
Well, that was a time-consuming process. I spared you watching me mess with these things for the last 3.5 hours, but finally got them all done. Accidentally cut some tubes too short, so we had to rebid some tubes. Sleeving, welding this up, cleaning all the welds up, getting it looking nice is a time-consuming process. If you can at all avoid it by just getting the bends all right the first time, I highly recommend it. Take the extra time, do it that way. This is going to take you longer than you think it will. Sanding this all up to look nice when you're welding tubes together is a lot of work, and that's if you have one of these things. This thing is invaluable. If you're trying to do this with just a regular grinder, it'd be a lot of work, and I don't think you'd ever be able to get it nice and smooth to where it looks like one tube again. Anyway, that said, I think they turned out pretty good. I think that looks pretty nice. Before we can weld these on, we need to take the bumper off and weld together what we have so far, because where these are going to go is going to block a few spots where I want to get some welding done. So we'll get this all welded up, then we'll weld these on, and it'll be time to start putting on our finishing touches. So let's get to doing some welding. All right, after spending a little time with the welder and some Scotch-Brite pads, the main structure is completely welded up, cleaned up, and ready to move on. Now that that's done, we'll get these lower tubes welded on, and then we'll put the whole thing back on the truck and see how it looks. As you can see, our bumper is back on. With the lower tubes welded in place, the main structure of our bumper is complete. Everything's fully welded, and bolts up, everything worked out just great. It fits across the front of the truck just the way I like it. Now, as you can see behind me, we've got some tape up here marking off where we're going to build our stinger. That's the next step, and so we're going to bend some tubes up and see how it looks. I used blue tape to visualize what I wanted, and then I bent the top tube to match the design. I spent a lot of time getting the angles just right, so that it was forward enough to provide some protection for the lights, but I didn't want it to end up high enough to block the bow tie in the center of the grill. Our bull bar slash stinger slash decorative upperpiece is now done. And that is the last of the 1 3/4 tube we're going to be putting on this thing. There's a couple of finishing touches I want to put on real quick, and when I pull this back off, I'll get those done. As I mentioned earlier, I needed to integrate turn signals into the bumper design. A small mounting bracket welded to the back side of the bumper let me mount these LEDs. I added some 1-inch tubing across the front of the mounting plate. I think it cleaned up the mounting plate and makes for a much more finished look. And with that, the design phase was done. It was time to pull it off for the last of the welding and get it painted. Got her all painted up, put on the truck, reinstalled the lights, and with that, our bumper build is done. One of the things I like most about the design here is how tucked in and tight it is to the grille. I really didn't want this massive chin of a bumper sticking out in front of the truck. I wanted to maintain that really tight approach angle. A couple of the things that I mentioned earlier that I added, you can see here I've got the turn signals installed on the bumper just like it was stock. I added this detail here to finish off the lower tubes, provide a little support for this plate, and frankly just look nice. I was also able to retain the stock braces that go right back here that were on the original bumper, so that this is braced back to the frame much better than it would have been otherwise. Was it necessary? Probably not. Most people that do a tube bumper don't add the braces, but I had them. I figured why not use them. Honestly, I'm stoked. This turned out way better than I thought. I think this turned out to be a great bumper, and I'm excited to get out on the trail and see if it performs the way I envisioned it performing. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching Uintagarage. All right, our bull blast.